there, fam. I was doing a normal vlog today, and in fact I was in the process of changing the channel name, but we'll talk about that another day because I realised it was World Mental Health Day to raise awareness of mental health issues. It's an opportunity for us all to be aware of mental health issues and to advocate against social stigma, which is something I've encountered, and I'm sure if you suffer, you have too. We need to sort of open up a wider conversation and address it, don't we? I mean, this year's theme, from what I can tell, is suicide and suicide prevention. And I wasn't aware, but every year close to 800,000 people globally take their own lives. And there are many more people who attempt to do so. And I've been at the raw end of that. Not myself taking my life, but as a police officer when I was, dealing with people who have, and the aftermath and the tragedy that affects the families and communities around them. It has long-lasting effects, it really does. But it's the leading cause of death amongst young people, especially 20 to 34-year-olds in the UK. And the second leading cause of death amongst 15 to 29-year-olds. I mean, I know the whole campaign is concentrating on suicide prevention, but I personally have got a real bee in my bonnet about something, so I'm going to concentrate on that. And I want to take one step back to where everybody is between the ages of about 11 and 15/16. And that is secondary school or high school, depending on where you are in the world. Now, I became aware this year that mental health awareness and strategies in secondary schools seems to be woefully lacking. I cannot for the life of me grasp why they don't have a school counsellor, just somebody that the kids can go and talk to, somebody that doesn't boss them around, somebody that doesn't put them in detention, somebody that's just there. I watched a very interesting programme on the prison system in America, and young girls of this age group over there are put in almost like a jail sort of environment. It sort of turns out to be more like a boarding school type place. But the reality was they were all misfits and troublemakers. But they had a counsellor, a very good counsellor. And by the time they all left, they were totally different people because they talked through what was making them angry. Because most people that are angry or are causing a disturbance, in my humble opinion, have normally got something else going on. You know, when I get angry and when I start kicking and screaming, it's when I've got something that's annoying me. And kids, teenagers, I mean, secondary school and that whole thing of growing up is just one ball of fire, isn't it, really? And it's like, get burnt if you try and touch it. And I feel like it's almost in the too difficult category for the schools. I mean, without going into too much detail, you go in to the school or whatever and you say this person has got an issue with anxiety or they're struggling a bit, and they promise to do something. So you walk away, and then a few weeks later, whatever they've promised hasn't happened. So you go back again, oh yes, sorry, we'll do that, we'll do that. And 2 or 3 times and nothing happens. So you call them up on it and they're like, oh, well, we've only got one Elsa, we're short of staff, we can't accommodate. So you say, right, okay, I'll pay for a private counsellor. I'll get some help privately, but I shouldn't have to do that. In this day and age, you shouldn't have to do that. And the next step is like an isolation. What's that all about? One of the things they use at this school as punishment is the first step, if you do something wrong, is obviously you get told off. Then you go on a report card, which you then have to get signed off by each teacher just to prove that you're being good. If you're then still failing, you go on what's known as an IE, which is an internal exclusion. this actually turns out to be being locked in a room on your own. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but the Human Rights Act says that everybody has a right to liberty, which means surely they're contravening the human rights of these kids. And secondly, by depriving them of their sensory abilities to talk and to interact, that's used in some countries as a torture technique. I mean, what's that all about? I really don't fathom it. Detention and community service and all that, I get it and I understand it. I do not understand how isolating somebody and then giving them work to do on their own, unsupervised, and then when they don't do it or get some of it wrong or can't do it without any help, they then get another detention. And this is somebody that has been flagged up several times this term for having anxiety and panic attacks. So instead of helping that person, they put them in detention. Because what happens when somebody is not getting heard and when somebody's got something going on and they need to talk about it and nobody is listening, people start kicking and screaming. And that's not allowed in school because you're not allowed an opinion and you're certainly not allowed to answer back or even enter into a discussion for that matter when you know that they've got something wrong. So it's just, to me, if somebody's already got a mental health problem, how is isolating them on their own going to help with that? And the answer is it's not. It's going to contribute to it and it's going to impact on it quite heavily. So as a police officer, when we had people that were vulnerable into custody and you were going to isolate them, and now under the Human Rights Act, arresting somebody is actually one of the criteria that's acceptable. So, but even so, we used to risk assess. Risk assess, risk assess, risk assess. And if they had mental health problems, then somebody was called in before you isolated them or interviewed them, because you had to prove they were fit to be dealt with. Now, I know school's a totally different environment. However, the isolation of being in a cell and the isolation of being put in a room on your own at school, the only difference is one's in a police station and one's in a school. And you probably get checked on more often in a police station than you probably do in a school. That, to me, is unacceptable. What I'm saying is there's no capacity, no understanding, no safety net to catch those children that have got mental health problems. I know of several kids in the 13 to 14-year-old bracket that have got issues, that are kicking and screaming and not coping. But what are we as a society doing for them? And the answer is very little, because there seems to be this attitude that, oh, they're children. Children don't have mental health problems. Well, rollicks, they do. They really, really do. They're just human beings like you and I. They have a brain. They have got mental health problems. And if they need to talk to somebody, why not have somebody there that they can talk to? Ah! The Human Rights Act does make a prevention or a stipulation that for school, let me read it properly because I can't remember. It says, detention of a minor by lawful order for the purpose of educational supervision is acceptable. Well, okay, but what happens when they're not being supervised and they're just sat in a room, dying for the toilet, having not eaten anything all day? Acceptable? Not acceptable. Question mark. don't know how, and I don't know what yet, but I'm going to do some research. But if I can do something to help this school get a grip, then I'm going to have a think about it. Maybe we'll have to fundraise and pay for a blinking counsellor for a year and see if it makes any difference. I don't know. But it is time to change, people. It's time to change the old-fashioned opinions that kids should be seen and not heard. That they should, don't do as I do, do as I say, as my grandfather used to trot out. Children should be seen and not heard. They are individuals, all but juvenile individuals. Is that the right word? But they still need, in fact, they need more guidance than the rest of us probably, and yet we discount them as needing it. And when we're punishing kids, are we punishing them for doing something really wrong? Or are we punishing them for crying out for help? Because if they're crying out for help and they've asked you politely on many occasions for help, and you haven't got anything you can offer them, and you've done nothing for them other than offer them empty promises, why are you then surprised if that individual kicks out? To me, it's logical. It's a logical and inevitable conclusion. And that's why schools are the way they are. Schools are full of teachers with mental health problems and kids with mental health problems. And they're all like this at each other. And somehow, someone has to bring things down. And I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But I'm going to think about it. If you agree with me, then comment on this video. If you think it's a valid point or something that should be discussed further, please share the video. I'd appreciate getting to as many people far and wide as I can, because there may be somebody that can help me or somebody with a suggestion that is going to make the most sense. Anyway, Bear Fam, thanks for listening to me today. I'm sorry it was slightly different, but mental health is something dear to my heart and I couldn't let it pass by. And the other subject has been burning in the back of my brain for a while and I needed to out it. So there we go. And the two correlate. So, speak to you soon.